Hello and welcome back to another 10-minute investor eye test with Arcanum Ventures. I'm Mello and this is my friend and co-founder Sasha. And today we're going to be looking at Rise blockchain, a next generation Ethereum layer 2 blockchain, redefining performance with infinite speed, supposedly the fastest Ethereum secured layer 2. Sasha, how's it going today? Do you know anything about Rise?
It's going good. I know a little bit about Rise. Actually, how people talk about how they're like the Bitcoin OG from back in 1998 discovered Bitcoin. I'm a Rise OG. I met the CEO Sam a couple of years ago in Vietnam at an Ethereum event, and he was telling me, hey, so I like started building a blockchain and this and that. I was like, oh, cool. Maybe we should invest. But that was a while back. Like I guess when they first we're getting started. And so, yeah, it's incredible to see, all the progress that's been made. So I'm excited to dive into this actually. But all I know really is that it's like a high throughput Ethereum layer 2. I don't know if there's like any other, like moat behind this thing.
Yeah, and it's become kind of a meme lately. Like how many layer twos and layer ones that we reviewed? We always say, what's the defining value prop that differentiates this from the rest? What is its technical moat, or at least attention share moat? So I guess we'll dive into just how fast this is, what it does differently, and I'm not sure who's invested in this yet, but we'll see in a short moment. But it's got an impressive cap table, so we get to figure out why. And for those unfamiliar, we take 10 short minutes, sometimes 11 if there's a little bit more to dive into, and we try to determine if this is something we would continue our diligence on, or if we would immediately say no, not for me, not for us. So we're going to take the next 10 minutes to dive into the website, some of the documentation, and try to figure out what Rise does differently and if it's worth looking more into. So we can throw 10 minutes up on the clock and just dive right in, and we'll give our verdicts at the end. So stay tuned. Let us know what you think, and give us a follow and a like and a comment even before you know what we are going to say about it.
Yeah, if you're dying to know. 10 minutes on the clock for Rise starting right meow. Boom. And we've got crypto rank up here, which is a good source of truth for IDOs, ICOs, and IEOs. And Rise right off the bat. I see Sam, who I had mentioned before, who I had met before. Also Sasha, she's one of the co-founders of Rise Blockchain. And there's a big name staring at me right in the face right here.
Yep,
As
one
far
of the
as funds
biggest.
and backers. Yeah, Galaxy, which is huge. Not only Galaxy, but Vitalik himself as an angel, Sandeep himself as an angel. We've got MH Ventures, OrangeDAO. There's a lot happening on this cap table, man.
Dacom as well. We got some friends over at
Oh yeah.
Dacom. Yeah, and then they got Stani from Avara and Ave and Lens.
Mm.
That's like a pretty solid. If I see this, I'm pretty happy if I'm a co-investor. So it looks like they raised in total 7.2 million. I don't know if that's up until now or including the intended $2 million public sale that's going to be going out. And another one on Capital Launchpad. This is Kaito's Capital Launchpad. I think we
Mm.
reviewed a project last week, Billions, that was also launching on Capital Launchpad. So it appears to be one of the newest additions to the Launchpad network, and they're quite busy and they're launching some pretty hyped projects because they have that marketing engine behind it. So it's interesting to follow along and see how those do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, that raises split up in the seed round, 3.2 million, which apparently Vitalik and some of the other notable angels are there under, and then strategic, which brought in Galaxy. And according to Crypto Rank, which we don't know how accurate this is, I believe it's
Yeah.
self-reported or user-reported. They filled that entire round, and they're aiming for a $2 million raise. No information around the tokenomics, but I do see here that they're pursuing a valuation of 200 million against the token supply, which that's pretty high for like just a simple Ethereum layer 2. But these individuals on the cap table, these organizations, maybe they see some merit behind it. So maybe we could dive in.
That being said, I mean, we've some wild valuations lately. I think Plasma had like a $2.5 billion valuation. That's a layer one just for stable coins. So it's pretty modest compared to what
Yeah.
we're seeing in others, or Pump Fund, which was what, like $6 billion valuation. So this is a whole layer two, but you're right. Like the cost of spinning up a layer two, the cost of running a layer two has gone down significantly. They're not as valued as they once were. It's not as impressive to build. That being said, I'm not trying to knock on them because I can't build my own blockchain. I have no idea what I'm doing in that front. But yeah, I think it's interesting. That's a pretty relaxed valuation, I think, and who knows what the original valuation is before Galaxy got in.
Yeah, not sure. I guess we're gonna find out. And right now, I've got the website up, and there are some numbers that are just glowing on here. And so I see 10 gigagas throughput. Like that's
Kick a
I
guess.
believe a little bit relative. You have to really know a lot about like blockchain consensus mechanisms to understand that. But here's a big number: 100,000 transactions per second. And we covered Rise in our 3 token launches happening this week video. And it's funny because Solana just proved their 100,000 transaction per second milestone, I believe, this past week. But
Okay.
still, this is pretty exciting. 100,000. There are a lot of blockchains that are trying to compete in what I'm referring to as the TPS wars. But you've got that paired with ultra low latency, 5 millisecond. If that's a settlement, that's incredible. And on top of that, they have a nice little image of a Ford GT, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like we covered Plasma a few weeks ago. That's 1,000 transactions per second, and just as a benchmark, like traditional fintech companies like Mastercard and Visa are around 60,000 per second. So this is faster, and I think they made a note to say this is the fastest secured by Ethereum because they don't want to run into issues bumping heads with in the TPS wars with like Solana or some of these newer blockchains that are not EVM that are quite fast. But we do have to add a note here and say like a lot of these say that they're fast in theory, but they've never been proven. So it's a good note that
Mm.
you mentioned Solana has like actually hit that benchmark because a lot of them say like in theory this is limitless or infinite speed, but in practicality or in practice, you know, nobody's actually used it or put stress on that network, which maybe they've achieved like 400 TPS actually in reality, which is interesting because we spoke with somebody from Solana too, and they said, we had this theory that maybe like meme coins are a good stress test for networks.
Mm.
It's a great way to create a bunch of volume and transactions just to like see if a network will break or bend under these circumstances.
Such a good point. And like people do forget, like you can market a lot around throughput, but there's I've said this a few times before, maybe within videos, but also to people around conferences. And the idea of trying to build these massive throughput blockchains
Yeah.
and all of them competing, it's kind of like building 1,000 different 12-lane highways, but there's no cars driving on them. Like what is the purpose of building this infrastructure if we don't currently need it yet? Or like Solana is one of the largest blockchain ecosystems in the world, and they
Hmm.
just hit 100,000 transactions per second. So like I don't see that utilization happening on a lot of these blockchains that are coming to market. Or like what kind of solution are they solving? It's like we're building things just for the sake of building them sometimes.
Yeah, you got to imagine that they're building them to impress some of these like more traditional fintech or traditional finance companies to say like, look at what we've built for. We anticipate this need in the future because we will be the ones to win. So at a certain point, it's like confidence. We're going to need this, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. Like saying we're going to do a billion gajillion TPS, it's like you're you're throwing your resources and your attention into the wrong thing right now.
Mm. Well, I
And
know it's a
oh,
small
that
team. I know they've done a good job of growing this. There's a technical white paper here. I think maybe we could dive into as well, and it kind
there's
of
got to
gives an
be more
idea of
than
like how this
three
works.
people for this blockchain, though, right?
I don't
It's a
know.
small team.
It's wild. They raised that much money and they're launching at that valuation. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, like there's obviously a lot of technical jargon here. There's a diagram of how like settlement happens within this network, and I don't see anything around the token. So what we want to find out is like obviously the token is going to be used as part of consensus mechanism as settlement layer. I don't know if I'm assuming because it's Ethereum layer 2, it's going to be some proof of stake or proof of stake hybrid for this L2, right? But I don't see anything around like other use cases, maybe for governance or
Yeah,
protocol layer decision making.
Yeah, it says below there base sequencing, like the move to decentralization. So they're planning to make this sufficiently decentralized, which is good. It's encouraging. We need more
Mhm.
decentralized layer twos on Ethereum. I don't know if you saw it the
Yeah.
other day, but Base network is completely centralized, and it went down for about 40 minutes the other day.
Oh
Um,
no.
and you have that ability to do that. Same with like BNB chain. Like it's an exchange chain, so they're able to control everything. They own all the nodes. But for these more decentralized networks, that's not really an option.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't see anything on the token at all, but we can just safely assume it's a network token. I think they're going to be using it for settlement. Maybe it's part of running nodes. I'm actually very curious to understand, like, to what level of network congestion or slowing down happens with the greater decentralization of the node supply or the node
Yeah.
network, right? Because that's we're talking directly about the blockchain trilemma. You can't really have your cake and eat it in many of these situations, unless maybe their proprietary shards or shreds technology has somehow solved that. Like we've seen some really interesting use cases for like parallel processing. I think Scale, and there was another blockchain where like Shardium. That's what it was, Shardium. Yeah, like all these
Yeah.
blockchains, they build like layers on top of themselves to try and like compound the settlement of like transactions and scale with user growth. But I don't know if that's happening here. They've got some buzzwords.
Yeah, and going back to like it's obviously not enough time to dive into it, read through the white papers. It's getting harder and harder to find like information about the token. We've noticed this trend lately, but like you said, we could kind of imagine what this token will do. It's not a traditional gas token because I don't think these chains want to have high gas prices. They don't want to make that a major component. So it's more about
Mm-hmm.
sequencing fees and decentralization. But one thing that's interesting is in the beginning of the website, it they had the right calls to action. They're like, check it out and learn more about it and build with us. So I haven't seen anything saying like who they're building with, who they're going to
Yeah,
attract. Like some of these, like I think it was Arbitrum just brought on Robinhood. That's a huge win for them and a huge win for Ethereum.
there's our 10 minutes. It's a great point. Yeah, like well, I guess we can talk about that in the verdicts, right? Because we've seen a lot of things, but we haven't seen a number of things that are very common for like trying to understand if a blockchain token would be a good investment.
Yeah.
So if you like, let's dive into some verdicts. And you want me to go first? Or you want to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. I'll dive in. And before we do, I want to remind everyone, if you're enjoying this video and you like our brains, throw us a follow, like this content, leave a comment below if you agree or disagree with us, or even if there's a fun upcoming project you want us to dive into next.
Hmm.
But when it comes to Rise blockchain, mm, I'm gonna give it a sideways thumb, and I'll tell you exactly why. So if it comes to the investment side itself, like the cap table is impressive, but it's not, I can't just run off of a cap table to make an
Yeah.
investment. And there's that quote that I read a while back 80% of investors delegate 80% of their decision making to other investors. And this is what I'm talking about. You look at a cap table and you think, oh, wow, Vitalik invested, I'm in. That's not a good way to invest, especially because there are a lot of VCs that know their brand has a lot of clout behind it, and
Yeah.
they could source exit liquidity from other VCs in later rounds simply by aping into something. So, is there merit behind Vitalik and Sandeep Nailwal and some of these other investors coming in? I don't know. Maybe. Is the technology impressive? Maybe. Got to dive into that a little bit more. Is there a sensible way of tying the digital asset into this? Maybe. We know that it's a blockchain, and there's the word like decentralization somewhere. And then is there a strong use case for this in traction? Maybe. No idea, right? We haven't seen anything on the website around what is their test net looking like, what's their ecosystem of builders. You'd sometimes see like an ecosystem map with a lot of logos and different companies that are building on something. There's no
Hmm.
mention of that anywhere, and there should be. because it's the standard now for blockchain networks that are coming to market. Otherwise, it's another dead chain. We just saw what happened recently with one of the co-founders of Story Protocol going on LinkedIn and marketing like, yay, after 3.5 years of building this successful network, I'm quitting and I'm moving into an advisory role and starting something else. And then on Twitter, he's being crucified like, you raised $160 million, you built a ghost network, and now you're just jumping ship with your golden parachute. Like, that's what you don't want to see happen here. So you want to like see information about like what is happening on this network and why is it being used and how is it being used. So that's a thumb sideways. I'm maybe interested in learning a little bit more, but still, best of luck to the team.
Yeah, interesting. With Story too, they I think he invested funds from Story into his new company, which is even crazier. Like, imagine investing into something and he's like, I'm quitting on the thing you invested in, and I'm also going to use some of the money you invested to invest in my own new company, whether you like it or not, which is crazy to me, but that's another story. But yeah, I think a huge conflict of interest. I think you nailed everything. There's not so much for me to add. It's a very sparsely populated website. There's not a whole lot of information. I think the biggest sin for these sort of things, because you and I are not technical enough to rip through a white paper and necessarily compare this without using it. Like, you need to straight up use these. You can't just read about these blockchains. You need to use them and test them in real time and try to break them. Like, that's what these test nets are for, but we don't have the time to use test nets all the time for all of the thousands of blockchains that are launching. So what we can look at as VCs based on our own experience is, like you said, the ecosystem map. I didn't see one name of one company they're building with, which is a huge mistake. Like, you need to show some source of activity, like who's building on your network, what kind of builders are you attracting, what is your niches that you're targeting, whether it's gaming or stable coins or DePIN or whatever. Like, what is the point of making the fastest L2 when you can't compete with the big dogs like Base? Nobody seems to care that Base is centralized. They just care that it's stable and it has a major company backing it. Nobody cares that Arbitrum is not the most decentralized. It's just the biggest. It's the most successful in business development. They have a huge network. They're successfully launching myriad orbit chains, layer 3s. So they know what they're doing. They figured out the assignment. These guys, they might have the best blockchain on Ethereum, as they say, but I can't say for sure. And it doesn't look like they have a whole lot of activity. And you're right about the cap table. As Arcanum Ventures, we want to hope that people see our name on a cap table and say, wow, I trust these guys because I see their videos, I see their articles, I know they do good work. If they've helped build the token economy, I trust them. But you can't bank on that. You can't say, I trust Galaxy. I don't know enough about Galaxy to trust their assessment of this. I don't know why they put $4 million into a follow-on round for a strategy after they raised $2.5 million in seed. I don't know what they saw to make that decision, but I would have to talk to them or try to figure that out, but it's irrelevant. We need to do our own assessment. We need to, acknowledge that, but say, all right, this is not the most important thing here. What can I assess here? What can I use based off my own experience, looking into thousands of blockchains that are launching? How does this stand apart as there's more and more of them? It gets harder and harder to compete in this very niche space. So I would also give it a thumb sideways. I think, it sounds like they have something impressive here, but what they do next with it is everything. So I don't see enough to encourage me yet. I would have to dive deeper, maybe get somebody technical, maybe learn more about the team and what they've built in the past. Because you might have met them. I don't know anything about these people. I don't know what their experience is, which companies they worked with before, etc. So yeah, thumb sideways. Looks interesting, but does it stick out for me? Not so much yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, best of luck to the team. I wish them well. I really hope that they don't fall into the trap of just launching another ghost chain and trying to compete. And then, launching a layer 1, layer 2 right now is extremely difficult. It's a very competitive space. And people were talking about we need block space. I don't know if we need block space anymore. So we'll see what happens.
Price has gone to zero, just like text, just like intelligence. It's all going to zero. It's getting cheaper than ever to buy. So Yeah, best of luck to the Rise team, and thank you for tuning in for another 10-minute investor eye test with Arcanum Ventures. Melo and Sasha here. Hope to see you next week, and leave us some messages, subscribe, follow. Check us out on other social media platforms as well, like Twitter and LinkedIn and all that fun stuff. We hope to see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Ciao, y'all.